Busisiwe Mavuso is the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. She joins us on the line now. Busisiwe, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. The figures that have been bandied around today from 500 billion rand to perhaps R1 trillion. Are you surprised to hear figures of that extent?
No, I'm not surprised at all, Stephen. I'm not surprised because I think we've always said that whatever number that we have placed on the cost of the state capital project has really been rudimentary, because there isn't a deep analysis that has actually been done to say how much has the state capital project costed us. But also, I think we're seeing evidence coming out day in, day out of the Zondo Commission, and how we as business and government have been complicit in actually, in this state capital project. So I think the quantification, I actually wouldn't be surprised if R1 trillion is actually less than what this has cost us, because if the quantification that this has taken us back to where we were in 1994 or even worse, then the number could actually be way above that. So I think the key now, Stephen, is going to be what are those key structural reforms that we're going to have to implement as a government, as an economy, as business, to ensure that we actually move our country forward.
Do you think it's possible to get some of this money back? I mean, obviously there's been action recently around the Americans, particularly in the Gupta family. There seem to be promises from the Justice Department, more resources going to prosecutions. Do you think that it's possible to get any of this money back, or do you think we just need to make terms with the fact that it's gone for good?
I think we should actually chase all possible avenues, Stephen. So let's try and get the money back while we implement the structural reforms, while we implement policies that are actually going to ensure that we position ourselves as an investment destination, so that even if we don't get that money back, at least we are attracting investment into the country. The fact that we are sitting as a country where the confidence levels of business are at a 20-year low doesn't augur well for business. And I think the key, focus of the president's travel to London was to precisely talk about trying to position South Africa as an investment destination. But we can't just say it, Stephen. We have to act it. We have to show it in our policy reforms. We have to show it in our structural reforms. We have to show it is actually a litigation or two that should come out of the Zondo Commission. So for me, there is no silver bullet to actually try and solve for South Africa's economic woes. It's actually going to have to be, an all-round approach targeted at all different interventions, because the situation for our country at the moment is dire and we need all the help we can get.
Obviously, the President speaking to international investors today, they have the President of South Africa saying, this is how much money we lost to corruption. How do you think that kind of comment goes down? Do you think it encourages them to invest here? Do you think they get the message from President Ramaphosa that there is action? He said to the Economist newspaper that the fuse has been lit, prosecutions will come.
So I think yes and no, Stephen. Yes, it actually dissuades them from the fact that we're talking about such large sums of money, and we're not saying that at least we have 10 people that are actually sitting in orange overalls, because of these occurrences. And I think, it actually is a good thing as well, because it says we have at least a fair view, or some quantum of how much we have lost to the state capital project. Because if you can't quantify it, if you can't measure it, if you can't at this point, 10 years later or 12 years later, be able to say this is a damage that this, initiative has cost me as a country, then it doesn't augur much confidence, because it says you might be shooting in the dark in whatever interventions that you might actually be trying to implement. But I think as we say that message, we're actually going to have to be very strategic. You say that, Stephen, to say this is how much we've lost, but you quickly move on to say, but these are the reforms that we've implemented. This is what we've done to strengthen our institutions. And I saw CR actually doing that, to say that SARS is back on track, the NPA is back on track. So investors are not so much interested in what has gone wrong, because things are going wrong in countries all over the world every day. But they want to know, are you in control? Do you have a plan? Do you have a sense of what your next steps are going to be in order to try and change the situation around? And then you quickly move on into the positive, and a call to action in terms of how you actually remedy the situation and what them coming into the country is actually going to bring. And that is where I think the policy reforms and some of the, advantages of coming into South Africa as the most advanced economy in Africa, is actually going to augur well for them. So I think the story is incomplete if you just talk about the state capital project and how much we've lost. It actually has to be the entire, story. Make them see or hear what it is that is like to hear, because that is what at the end of the day investors are interested in. what is the investment in South Africa in the future going to hold for me versus what has been in the past. And I think we can't downplay that, but I think our focus and our story can't just start and finish there.
Over the last few months, it seems that organised business has perhaps started to become quite critical of President Ramaphosa, to start to question whether he'll actually act against those who committed corruption. Do you believe now that he will act, that the NPA will act against those who committed wrongdoing during the state capture era?
You know, interestingly enough, we had this conversation with Shamila Patoy last week, Tuesday, as the BLSA. And really the focus of the conversation was, Shamila, how do we assist you? How do we capacitate, your institution? How do we make sure that you come out with at least some of the key litigations? How do we ensure that as you do the work that you do, there is strong signaling that is sent to the business community, to the international community, to the credit rating agencies, to the global, economy in terms of where South Africa is going? Have you done, a situational analysis of where the gaps exist within the NPA? Do you have the right prosecutors at the right level with the right capabilities? So I think it was a very constructive conversation. We're actually very encouraged as business to learn that in the 8 months that Shamila has been in the job, she has actually, nipped the issues that confront the National Prosecuting Authority in the bud in terms of where the failures of the institutions are, and unless and until you have that clear analysis, Stephen, that unfortunately going forward is going to be a problem. So Shamila has got that, and she definitely has a view, and has strong proposals in terms of what needs to be done. But obviously the issues around budgetary constraints still remain. The issues around the skills that they've lost over the years still remain. The issues around, just the low morale, of the NPA employees, still remain. So she's confronted with a lot of issues. So hers actually also is not going to be one silver bullet. She's actually going to have to sort of be working this car while she's on the road. And we are keen as business to say that we are committed to ensure that this ANC-led government is a capable state. Point us in the right direction in terms of how we can come on board and assist you. So if you've got an institutions where the systems are failing, where the people are failing, where the processes are failing, you can imagine that you actually don't have an institution at all. And Shamila actually pointed to all of these as failures within the NPA. But I think the fact that we already know what is wrong, for me, Stephen, is half the job done. Because we've already identified this. All you need to do is to actually say, what am I going to do to ensure that I reform myself and I actually, rebuild the institution? But this is where the trick is, Stephen. If we as business, when trying to lend our support, from a resources perspective, whether be it financial or people resources, it's not going to be told by the South African public that is the business's way of trying to capture the NPA. It becomes problematic because we know that our fiscal is drained. We know that the much needed resources for our institutions to work, are just not there from a fiscal perspective. So can we be then allowed, the space as business to assist in a constructive manner, not in a way of trying to capture, but in a way of trying to build South Africa? Because unfortunately, this economy is not going to grow when we have these key institutions that are dysfunctional and can't do what they're supposed to do. What Cyril Ramaphosa is actually doing is going to be a futile exercise if these investors are going to come into the country where the staff is not working, where our prosecutors are not working, where the municipalities are not working, where the SABC is not working, where all the key institutions are not working. So I think business is going to have to be allowed the space for us to meaningfully come on board and start shifting some of these key things that need to be done in the country.
Busisiwe Mavuso, thank you very much indeed. The CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, Busisiwe Mavuso, on the line there.